So, in my other channel, when I say other channel, I mean my other videos that are the fun little side little videos I do for where I stream my chess games. I've mentioned that I have an upcoming chess tournament here in November. And so yesterday, in preparation for it, I was practicing with my coach, and he ended up beating me over the course of 4 games. Like, just 4-game streak, he just swept me because he's been playing chess for 50 years, and I am, basically a noob. So, but while I was playing and while I was training with him, I noticed that he kept on getting more frustrated, and I couldn't figure out why, because he himself was winning. Like, he kept on, after each game, basically, he seemed a bit more agitated, basically, and it wasn't at my play. And what happened was, at the very end, I had asked him, hey, is everything okay? What's going on? And he basically told me that his friend had died and that the funeral was going to be tomorrow. And so obviously did the condolences, and very, very tragic to hear that. But the reason why he was agitated, he said, was because he hadn't reached out to this friend in several, what he said basically was a long time. I assume that means years. I don't know, but he said in a long time, although he had intended to. He kept telling himself, I guess, like, hey, I wanted to reach out to this person here, but didn't do it. And I think he said something along the lines of, sometimes I can be a complete idiot about things. Now, the reason why I'm bringing this up and why I'm mentioning this is what happens over the keyboard, what happens over the board in chess, what happens when you are at the word processor. That doesn't mean a whole lot if you don't have that foundation in your personal life already. You can be the absolute best chess player at the local hall. You can be the best writer at your little local library writing group. But if your personal life is a mess, if there are things you're holding on to, that resentment, things that you feel like you should do but you aren't doing, what's going to happen is no amount of success at what you're doing is going to matter. No amount of achievement, no good section that you write, no winning chess game, no amazing chapter is going to matter. Because what happens in your personal life always trumps that. It trumps what happens on the page. It trumps what happens in your activity. And I've spoken before about the idea that your art needs to be energizing and your personal life needs to be boring. And when I say that, I mean that you need to have stability. You cannot be in a frantic state in doing these things, because your work is never going to satisfy you. That's the first part of it. Your work is just not going to bring you any kind of satisfaction, as my friend, or my coach yesterday, who mentioned, who basically got 4 wins in chess and didn't matter one bit because he was holding on to this resentment. And it's not going to matter because you can't do your best work when you're thinking of 2 different things. You can't put out your best writing when you are thinking about, oh man, I got to pay the mortgage, or I got to do X, Y, and Z. I got to call this person. I got to do something. When that's in your mind, when that's constantly, kind of prevailing your thoughts, you can't put out the best content. This is why people are suddenly discovering meditation here, because they're trying to find ways to sort of push these thoughts aside and focus on just one thing at a time. Well, it's basically the same thing. Having stability basically allows you to focus on just your art when the other things are already checked off. It's like that Maslow's hierarchy of needs there, right? It's a similar thing. You need to have your stability, both emotional and obviously just like the physical, economic stability, met before you can start producing, I think, great content. This is not to say that, all work has to be produced when you are at your best. I imagine Shakespeare had to write Some of his plays just to keep, I mean, to metaphorically keep the lights on at the Globe Theater, right? Obviously, there was no lights at the time, but you get my point. I imagined there were plenty of writers that were starving, especially, before, the 21st century, who were writing, short stories for magazines just to get the paycheck. So you can produce good work in this sort of state of desperation, but it's not ideal. I don't think in any way it's ideal. And I think for a lot of people who maybe find success in that, there's tons and tons and tons and tons and multitudes of more people who just collapse and crumble under that, because it's very difficult to do that. It's very difficult to produce your best work while stressing about something else. It's very difficult to compartmentalize your thoughts like that. And so this video is just a reminder that you need to have the stability in your life first before you can produce that great content. So don't neglect that. Don't neglect, if you've got something going on in your personal life that needs to be dealt with, don't neglect it. Don't keep pushing that off. You've got to tackle that first. Otherwise, your work is going to suffer, and you don't think about it. You don't think it's actually going to do that. You think, I bet even as I say this now, you might be thinking, well, no, I mean, what are you talking about? There's no way they're correlated. I'm telling you, you being stressed out, even if it's a small level of stress, even if it's something that's just occupying your mind, not dealing with that first is going to affect your writing. It's going to. It'd be very, very difficult to imagine not having it not affect you. And so again, just a final sort of plea here that, hey, if you are experiencing these sort of things in your life, if your life is unstable in a sense, tackle that first. Get that under control, and then from there, worry about the writing. Once you have that satisfied, then focus on putting out your best work.